railways carry around 230,000 people every day and are an important part of life in Scotland, moving both passengers and freight to over 350 stations. But how did we get here? To find out, we have to travel back more than 200 years to the beginning of the 19th century. At that time, Scotland was industrialising rapidly, and the need to move goods became increasingly important. Road transport was very slow and costly, relying on horses to move people and goods along bumpy roads. A team of 4 horses could pull a load of up to 2 tons and would take around 12 hours to travel between Glasgow and Edinburgh. The fastest and easiest way to move bulky goods at this time was by water. The completion of the Forth and Clyde Canal in 1790 linked the east and the west of the country for the first time, although it wasn't until 1822 that the Union Canal was completed, allowing goods to be brought directly to Edinburgh. Canal boats were pulled by horses and travelled quite slowly at around 2 to 3 miles per hour, but one boat could take over 30 tons of goods at a time. The era of canals was short-lived, however, as soon after the completion of the Union Canal, railways came to dominate transport in Scotland. The very earliest railways were developed to move coal from collieries to their destinations. The first recorded example in Scotland linked coalfields in Tranent in East Lothian to the port of Cockenzie and was built in 1722. It was 2.5 miles long and had wooden rails upon which horses pulled 2-ton wagons on an incline, down towards the sea when the wagons were loaded, and back up when they were empty. A later example of this was the Kilmarnock and Troon Railway, which became the first Scottish railway to be incorporated by an Act of Parliament in 1808 and opened in 1812. It was not licensed to carry passengers at first, but the railway found a way past this constraint by weighing would-be travellers and charging them the same rates as freight, conveying them in trucks filled with straw. Later, specially constructed carriages were introduced, much like stagecoaches, for which they were charged a shilling each way to travel outside, or 2 shillings and sixpence to travel inside. The first trains were horse-drawn. In 1817, the Kilmarnock and Troon Railway acquired its first steam locomotive, built by George Stephenson, but the cast-iron rails were not strong enough, and regular breakages forced a return to horse haulage. Various types of steam locomotives were built over the next decade until, in 1829, the famous Rain Hill trials were held to find a reliable design for the nearly complete Liverpool and Manchester Railway. George and Robert Stephenson's Rocket was the only locomotive to complete the trial successfully, establishing the Stephensons, Father George and son Robert, as the pre-eminent locomotive manufacturers of the day, and assuring the place of steam as the principal source of power for railways. The success of the earliest companies led to huge investment in railways. The 2,236 miles of railway opened in 1844 became a staggering 13,562 miles by 1870. These railways were all privately funded and were owned by many different companies which, over time, amalgamated. By the early 20th century, there were 5 main companies operating in Scotland: the Caledonian, the Glasgow and South Western, the Highland, the Great North of Scotland, and the North British. By 1914, Britain was at war with Germany, and the railways played an essential part in ensuring victory over the next 4 years of conflict. During the First World War, the government took control of the railway system from the private companies. Priority was given to transporting essential supplies and troops, and, apart from horrific disasters such as that at Quinton's Hill in 1915, when 226 people were killed, the system coped remarkably well. It was not until 1921 that the railways were once more handed back to the private companies, and even this was a change. In 1923, the many companies which made up railways were grouped into just 4. Of these, only the LMS and the LNER operated in Scotland. At first, the new companies struggled to improve the country's ageing Victorian rail network. It took until the 1930s before new designs could begin to make their mark. By this time, the results could be seen in the form of fast new express locomotives and powerful freight engines. The main lines to Edinburgh and Glasgow from London saw an extraordinary publicity battle between the LMS and the LNER, with glamorous streamlined expresses vying to break the world rail speed record. However, in 1939, fate stepped in once more. Britain declared war on Hitler's Germany, and railways were again put at the forefront of the struggle. Non-essential journeys were curtailed, and even from the beginning, the system came under enormous strain, with over 120,000 children evacuated from Glasgow to the countryside in specially laid-on trains in September 1939. Victory came in 1945, but by this time Britain's railway companies had been impoverished by the war. The decision was taken by the newly formed Labour government to turn Britain's railways into one single nationalised company, British Railways. In 1948, Scotland's railways became known as British Railways Scottish Region, and by the mid-50s a plan was implemented to move, eventually, completely away from steam power to diesel and ultimately to electric traction. And so steam locomotives were gradually phased out in Scotland until, by mid-1967, there were none left. In 1963, Dr. Richard Beeching, the new chairman of the British Transport Commission, produced a report which recommended the closure of large parts of the rail system. By 1970, some 650 miles of track in Scotland had vanished. This meant that many villages and towns which had been served by a railway since the 19th century were now dependent on transport by road, the railways to many rural routes being considered too costly to maintain. Scotland's railways carried on during the 1970s and 80s with diesel and electric services now the norm. The main line from London to Glasgow was electrified, and the route from London to Edinburgh saw the arrival of sleek Intercity 125 high-speed trains. Since 1996, Britain's railways have once more been placed into private ownership, with different companies bidding to run the services. Scotland is unique in the United Kingdom in having only one company operating its internal passenger services, ScotRail. The last few years have seen a tremendous increase in passenger numbers, as well as the reopening of previously closed lines and the creation of new stations. In 200 years, Scotland's railways have changed almost beyond recognition. Who knows what the future might hold for them and for tomorrow's passengers?